What's up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. It is time for another presidential election review. Obviously, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. I'm aware that Let's Talk Elections did release his prediction yesterday, and he uh, 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 he is a conservative personally. Many people don't know that about him, but he is a conservative. He believes that Biden has a very good chance at winning. And if you look at JHK forecasts, just quick odds, Donald Trump has a 34% chance of winning, a little more than 1 in 3. Biden has a 66% chance of winning. Uh, Biden is ahead in key states like Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. He is narrowly trailing Trump in, I wouldn't say narrowly, but he isn't doing horribly in Ohio. Georgia, he's gotten better at. But if you look at over time, look at Wisconsin over time, definitely going in his favor. His lead is getting bigger and bigger. If you look at states like Arizona, originally he was supposed to lose in Arizona. He even in March, Trump was beating him consistently, and it kept falling and falling and falling until Biden overtook him in the middle of April, and he has now taken off with his lead, and it is only expected to get bigger and bigger. And it could be somewhere up to even more than 60% because Donald Trump had a 62% chance of winning it even in the beginning of March. Now Biden is looking like he could. He currently is at 54.5%. He could get that up to 60 even before July starts. So yeah, excuse me, wrong tab. Um, and Florida is a state I've been focusing on a lot. I kind of slept on it for the Democratic Party. I did not expect them to really win this state. However, since since the middle of April, Biden is expanding his lead. I characterize this as tilt a Republican in past elections. I've already made up my mind now. So, without further ado, let's get started. So for just a reminder, 12 plus is safe. A 12 plus margin of victory is safe. 5 to 12 margin of victory is likely. 2 to 5 margin of victory is lean, and is in 0.1 to 2 margin of victory is tilt. The coasts. I know that the Red Eagle does like to put Oregon as likely blue. However, if you look at the polls there, uh, excuse me, he has negative 21 net approval in the state of Oregon. When you look at polls in the state of Oregon, if I can find it, that would be. Oh, there are no polls. However, you can see all the polls that have been taken. RCP, if I can find. Oregon's not a battleground state, but if you want to look at okay, so there are no polls at Oregon, but if you want to look, if there are polls, and there are going to be some polls that are released before election day, it's going to be bad news for the Trump campaign. New Mexico is most certainly going to go blue um, in in this election. If you want to look, at if there is a poll for New Mexico, uh, okay, there are some polls. They all have Biden murdering Trump here. Sanders was beating him by 18 in January. The most recent one on April 24th on PPP, public policy polling, which I know a lot of Republicans do not like. Biden ahead by 12. Sample size of a little more than 1,000, and consistently Biden is at the edge, or the Democratic candidate. Even Elizabeth Warren, who I think would have been a pretty weak candidate for the Democrats, um, uh, was trailing in that state. Now, Illinois is going to be safe blue. I don't think there are any polls in the state. If I can find them, yeah, there are no polls in Illinois. But he's very unpopular there, as you can see, negative 18 net approval rating. Um, so yeah, I don't expect him to carry that state. When you take a look at the broad type of demographics. Chicago, obviously, a very large city, has a population of I think 3 million. Just in the city itself, the metro area includes millions of more people. Uh, so middle class cities like Joliet and Aurora, in also kind of the northeast region of the state, are expected to swing back from red to blue. There's no reason to think that the Democrats should lose this state. I mean, Hillary Clinton, who is a very weak candidate in the Midwest, still won Illinois by a resounding margin. Um, Now Virginia is going to be safe blue. I mean, um, Trump's approval rating there isn't horrible. Uh, as of right now, his approval is at 42.7, which it's kind of been at a low point because it is a low point for the Republican Party right now overall. But in the state of Virginia, -5 net approval there. JHK forecasts, if you want to look at that, fun side to play around with. Biden has an 88% chance of winning that state. So yeah, I mean, he's always had a consistent lead, and there's really no reason to believe that he is going to lose to Trump there. I mean, it's been trending blue um, ever since it's ever since 2008, and in 2006, I believe they elected a Democrat to the Senate. I believe it's Tim Kaine. I may be wrong though. Is there polling? Yes, there is polling here. I'm sure it has Biden ahead by a lot. Even Amy Klobuchar, who I think a very weak candidate in the South, she she was beating Trump here. And if you look at Biden in the polling for him overall, he is absolutely destroying Trump. So yeah, it's safe to say that Virginia is going to be safe blue. And I'm only doing the polls for states that people can actually kind of have a debate about. Obviously, New Connecticut, Connecticut and Rhode Island are not going to be competitive at all. If there's any polling, there is polling. Biden ahead by 23. Really, no reason to believe that Connecticut is going to be competitive at all. No polling for Rhode Island, and Donald Trump's approval rating in those states. Sorry, I have too many tabs open. And Donald Trump's approval rating in those states are dismal. I mean, -18 in Rhode Island, -17 in Connecticut. No reason to believe he will pull out a win in either of those states or even make them competitive remotely. Massachusetts obviously going to go blue. Vermont, a safe blue state. And Maine, 3 of their 4 electoral votes are going to be safe for the Democratic Party, as well as Hawaii, which I forgot about. Now, for the Trump campaign, not Oregon. Oregon is very far from being safe red. Montana should be safe red at this point. I'm not going to talk about Utah, but I am going to talk, I'm not going to put Utah as safe red yet, because I do want to have a talk about Utah for a second. And Indiana, I would not usually put as safe red. However, at this point in time, Mike Pence is Donald Trump's running mate, and I would expect him. Oh, why is New York not safe blue? Okay, and I would expect him to win that state by something like 14 points lower in safe state. Now, Utah. The recent polls came out in Utah that show. That show very bad news for the president. Really bad polling. I mean, only ahead by 3 points. And there was a poll in the general election that was taken at the end of April that had Trump ahead by 19. I mean, all these polls have Trump ahead. It'll be funny to find a poll that has anyone ahead. Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders leading. Like, I can see Sanders pulling out a win in Utah somehow in a best case scenario, but not Joe Biden. Trump +3 in the polling. I know the Red Eagle Politics did make a video about this, but realistically, Utah is not going to be competitive. And I do trust the polls. They've been very accurate since Trump took office. They predicted Doug Jones winning. They got the 2018 midterms correct, except for the gubernatorial election in Florida, but that was really the only election they got wrong. Utah should be red come 2020. Now, I'm not going to give Alaska to the Republicans because I believe Joe Biden has the potential to make this competitive. I don't believe there are any polls that have been taken on Alaska. There are. My bad. Yes, Trump is ahead, but against Biden, he does not. This is a pattern. I mean, facing Buttigieg in Warren, he's winning huge against Kamala Harris. He's winning big, but against Joe Biden, that prospect is not looking good for Trump. Um, so we're going to give Alaska to the Republicans by a lean margin. So I'm just going to do the lean Republican states at this point. Um, Now, Missouri should be safe. A Republican, or should be likely Republican, excuse me. There are some polls that did come out recently in the state of Missouri. We Ask America, where it has Trump ahead by 4. Originally, Trump had big leads all across Missouri. So, yes, I do expect I do expect uh, uh, this to narrow. I mean, 2016 it was a 19-point win for Donald Trump in the state of Missouri. So yeah, there are some polls that have been taken here that I want to look at. This one, Trump ahead by 4 against Biden. He's ahead by 10. I think that's too generous to the Republican Party. I believe he's going to win this by 6 to 8 points. Generally, against Biden, +7, +4. Yes, Trump has the edge here, but he's going to win this by a likely margin. The same thing goes for the state of Iowa and Ohio. Now, Ohio could be a competitive. It could be a lean state, but at this point, I do not see it flipping back to the to the Democratic Party. Iowa and Ohio both went blue in 2016 or in 2012 as well as 2008. There are a lot of polls that have been conducted here. So if you want to look at them, some of them have Biden ahead. I knew this one has Biden ahead by 1, but the rest have Trump ahead. And polls in Midwestern states where there are more registered Democrats than Republicans, there are more registered Democrats than Republicans in Ohio. That does favor the Democrats, and I don't see a path to victory for Joe Biden in Ohio. Yes, he's certainly going to make it pretty close. I could see this narrowing down to a lean margin for the Biden campaign, but it's not going to happen unless something drastic changes in the Midwest that would tip the scales in Biden's favor. As for Iowa, if you want to look at Iowa's polling, there are some polls that have Biden ahead. Oh, there aren't. Yeah, there was one that had Sanders ahead back in 2019. I remember that. Okay, this was what I'm thinking of. It was back in March, so obviously not very uh, promising for the Democrats here. Iowa, now Iowa is a wacky because it's a very rural state. They only have one semblance of an urban area. It's called Des Moines. Des Moines Cedar Rapids is not very urban at all, and it's more conservative in terms of big cities. And also, I do want to point out that that Iowa has three. They have 4 congressional uh, representatives in the House. Three of them are Democrats. Most notably, Abby Finkenauer, who I do expect to get reelected. Um, Democrats could lose a House seat in Iowa come 2020. I mean, it realistically could happen. However, I don't believe uh, that um, that uh, Biden can pull it off here. He can make it maybe a lean similar to Ohio, but if the Democrats do want to flip either Iowa or Ohio, they should be focusing more on Ohio because they have more urban areas like Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, Akron, whereas Iowa doesn't really have that. So yeah, Texas is also a likely red region. There definitely have been some polls taken on the state of Texas. Um, uh, One had them tied, and one even had Biden ahead by 1. I cannot see a poll that has a Democrat ahead in Texas. Now, I know back in 2018, Beto O'Rourke made a very close race, and I really thought there when I was watching that, I believed that Beto O'Rourke was going to win. He had amassed a huge lead over Ted Cruz, and I thought that Ted Cruz was going to make it close, but that O'Rourke was going to flip that seat. Um, he did not. In the end, he came very close, but he lost his bid for to unseat Ted Cruz. Now Cruz was reelected barely. It's not going to be that close. Uh, Trump ahead by 4 in the most recent poll by an A minus rated poll. The poll that had Biden had PPP has a B grade And if you want to see the rest of the polls, they all have Trump ahead. Biden ahead by one. I don't see how Biden does pull off a victory there. He's going to lose by something like 7 to 10 points. The same goes for South Carolina, which I'm going to rate as likely for the Republicans. It's even more hopeless for the Democrats here now. I know that Haim Harrison, Lindsey Graham's Senate challenger, is tied with him in the polls. Haim Harrison is almost certainly going to outperform Joe Biden in that state. Now, let's go back to Colorado and Nevada. I have upgraded Colorado, or I've downgraded Colorado from safe blue to likely blue because I don't think anything has changed. I have to think I was overestimating the Democrats' strength in Colorado. If you look at the polls in Colorado, there have been some polls. Uh, I think Bernie Sanders would have probably defeated Trump in Colorado by more. However, Joe Biden has been expanding his lead. Now there was a poll that had Biden ahead by 19 and 18, and there was one that had John Hickenlooper ahead of Cory Gardner by 18 in the Senate race, but that's not going to happen realistically. I do not see a safe margin for the Democrats in Colorado. I used to put both these states as safe, not going to anymore, just because they are so high unlikely that at this point they're not very competitive for the Republicans. Even though Donald Trump says he has a path to victory in New Mexico, Nevada, and Virginia, even though those are really safe states for the Democrats. Minnesota is also going to be likely, as is Michigan, for the Democratic Party. When you look at the polling in Minnesota, it actually, I would argue, it favors the Republicans because they take polls from areas everywhere. Now, I know if the Democrats really want to win Minnesota by a 12-plus margin of victory, they should choose Amy Klobuchar because she is so popular there, and she'd probably win the state by something like 20 points. Now, Joe Biden ahead by 5. That's not fair to the Democrats. I believe they're going to win by at least 7 points, maybe 10 points at max for them. As for Michigan, all the polls indicate that Joe Biden is on the pathway to victory here. Some have been by 9, some have been by 8, some by 3, 2, 6, 6, 8, 6, 7, 9. All been done pretty recently. The most recent one has about 50%, which is a good sign for him. I mean, in 2018, the Democrats flipped a governor's mansion seat there. Gretchen Whitmer was elected governor. She defeated Snyder, the incumbent governor, I believe. He was the incumbent, I'm pretty sure. And they also won a Senate race there, and they are going to win the Senate race in 2020. Gary Peters is going to hold on to his seat against John James. New Hampshire should be likely for the Democratic Party. Actually, I'm not going to do that yet. I went off script there, and it did not pay off. Now, leans for the Republicans. Certainly, the state of Georgia is going to be lean for them. And yeah, I mean, arguably, I could put it in the tilt column at this point because of the polls. Actually, some of them do have Biden ahead. There was one that had Biden ahead that was added pretty recently, May 19th. However, even though the polls do show a Biden victory here, it's not very likely that he wins here. Even JHK forecasts, which is I think the best website for this. Georgia, even they don't believe that Joe Biden has a good shot at winning. I think this margin is a bit much. Yes, it's a lean margin. And at one point, Donald Trump did have an 80% chance of winning the state of Georgia. However, that's not going to happen anymore. It's getting closer and closer. It could narrow down to like Biden getting a 40% chance of winning Georgia. Stacey Abrams really hit their peak there, and they have to wait another 4 years if they want to flip anything in Georgia, a Senate seat, governor seat, or anything like that. Yeah, that's essentially it for the Republicans until further notice. Now, Nevada is going to be a lean state for the Democratic Party. Now, I know Donald Trump is very unpopular there by a likely margin. If you want to look at the polling, he is doing really poorly here. Joe Biden is ahead in all the polls that are available. Democrats ahead. Now I know there was one taking against Elizabeth Warren in November of 2019 that had Trump ahead. One had Trump ahead nearly over Biden, and Nevada is trending to the left. However, I think that trend is kind of halted. It was trending really fast to the left. It's kind of like pulling in Arizona, or just it's trending to the left like every year. It's getting no, noticeably more and more liberal. But I think that progress has halted in Nevada. I mean, yes, Dean Heller did lose his re-election bid in 2018, and they flipped a governor's seat there. But that was mostly because incumbent Brian Sandoval, a Republican, was term limited, so he couldn't run again. Now, I'm going to go to the state of Pennsylvania, Joe Biden's home state. Pennsylvania, I would put it likely similar to Michigan, but I'm not going to do that because of the fact that Joe Biden um, is, I believe he's in favor of the Green New Deal. I may be wrong. However, all the polls have him ahead of Donald Trump. JHK forecast gives him a 68% chance of winning. Um, as you can see here, he is projected to receive over 50% of the vote. And it did narrow down for a little bit. So this does follow trends. Remember, start of the coronavirus in America, the rally around the flag impact of that, it is now just getting bigger and bigger for Biden. Pennsylvania, I believed Donald Trump. I did project Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. I believed he was going to win it back in 2016. I see it flipping back to the Democrats. I mean, it's a Democratic state. Its blood is blue, I guess you could say, and there's no reason to believe that it is going to flip back to the Republican Party. Um, and I think it's just going to go for the Democrats. Well, I also forgot to give Omaha, that district, to the Republicans by a lean margin. It's pretty simple, you know. I wonder if there is a poll on Nebraska. Yeah, there's no polls on Nebraska. Now, he's very popular in Nebraska, but six, I think, is a telling sign for him because Nebraska, I mean, other than Omaha, is very rural, very conservative. Um, Trump kicked butt there in 2016, and he's going to kick butt again in all the other regions other than their second congressional district, which should realistically go to him by like 4 or 5 points. Now, I'm going to do one more state for lean for the Democratic Party before I oops, no. Yeah. So now New Hampshire is interesting because Donald Trump's approval rating is so bad here. I mean, -18 in the state of New Hampshire. JHK forecast does not give Trump a very good shot at winning New Hampshire. Only a 28% chance of winning. When he lost the state by like 2,000 votes in 2016. 2,000 votes. Hillary Clinton lost Michigan by 10,000 votes. Now there are 4 times as many people in Michigan there, and there are in New Hampshire, but still, it's still very close. And New Hampshire was actually, in terms of percentage, almost as close as Michigan was, almost. So yeah, New Hampshire, I just think college-educated voters there, it has always gone blue, except for when it went really weirdly for George Bush in 2000 over Al Gore. It is going to stay in the Democratic column. I originally did think it was going to go for the Republicans because of how rural it is, uh, especially up in the north, very sparsely populated, and because I think Hillary Clinton, I mean, being from the Northeast, probably helped during New Hampshire a little bit. But Trump's Trump's approval rating there is so bad, and the polls do not show good signs for him there. I mean, one did have him ahead over Bloomberg by 14, but this one has him ahead by 8. That was clearly an outlier. So yeah. Now, there are. Oh, sorry, I forgot this. I keep saying now way too much and then forgetting what I'm going to say after that. Maine second congressional district, very rural. I wonder if there are polls taken on Maine. Yeah, there are. Okay, so we can't do it by district, but but this is statewide polling. Biden plus 10. He's always going to win the first congressional district in the statewide stuff by maybe this could be a likely margin. It could narrow down to a likely margin, but that should be a Republican margin because of how rural it is. So yeah. Lastly, tilt Democratic states. Arizona is going to go to the Democratic Party. All the polls have Biden ahead. That's weird. Arizona, all the polls have him ahead. There's one poll that had him ahead over Bernie Sanders, but it was pretty clear that Bernie Sanders was not really going to win Arizona, even if he did somehow win the election over Donald Trump in a scenario like that. Um, so yeah, all the polls have a Trump ahead, and I rate this state as likely Democratic at the Senate level, and it's gonna Kelly is probably gonna help propel Joe Biden to victory there. It's very likely that he wins this by a lean margin. I could move this to lean. I was considering doing that, but right now I'm gonna keep it in. I think what is the most safe option, tilting to the Democratic Party. By so I'm going to do this by likeliness. I think Wisconsin. Wisconsin is probably the second most likely state to go to the Democrats out of these four states that are left. Because as you can see, it's near the Rust Belt, so it's surrounded by Minnesota, Illinois, and Michigan, and it does border Iowa, but whatever. And all the polls do have Biden ahead. But I want to talk. No, West Virginia. Whoa, that is really bad news for the Democrats. Wisconsin, um, all the polls, so you can look at the polls, and the polls have Biden ahead by 10, and Morning Consult does have him ahead by, or has Donald Trump negative 10 net approval in Wisconsin, but overall, I want to talk about 2018. Tammy Baldwin, um, in Wisconsin, she was reelected to the U.S. Senate by 11 points. They replaced an incumbent, formerly popular Republican Governor Scott Walker with the Democrat Tony Evers. JHK forecasts talk about Wisconsin. They have Biden 60% chance of winning there, and yes, demographics don't look great for the Democrats because it is a very white state. Not a ton of college-educated voters there, but I think it's going to go back to its Democratic DNA. The state voted for Michael Dukakis in a time when he got his butt kicked by George H.W. Bush. So all the reasons point to the Democrats winning back Wisconsin. North Carolina comes next. Look, all the polls have Biden ahead in North Carolina. It's pretty obvious that it's going to go to Biden by a narrow margin at this point. Yes, one poll had Trump ahead by 3, but all the others, like Biden ahead by 7. Um, one has them tied, the most recent one, but I think Cal Cunningham is going to help Biden pull it off here. A ton of new black voters. I believe there are nearly 1 million new registered voters in the state. Most of them primarily black voters. So I think the Democrats, all the signs here point to them winning. They're going to win this race. Also, there were no elections here in the midterm, so we can't really talk about that. Now, 29, Florida's toss-up electoral votes. I previously had this. This is my previous map. Disregarding margins, this is my old map. I'm going to give this to the Democratic Party. And I was like, how can this is kind of similar to a landslide? How can Joe Biden win this by basically the same margin that President Obama defeated Mitt Romney back in 2012? Well, first of all, Florida just gave convicts the right to vote, even if they're still in prison. All the polls have Biden ahead, and even back when I was doubting Biden winning in Florida, he was ahead here consistently. He overtook Trump after coronavirus started getting bad, and the public was critical of Trump's handling of it. And his margin has been growing and growing, and it could be up to past 60%. So yes. Second, demographically, I made a video on Florida flipping blue this morning. I'm not going to talk about it actually because of that, so just go watch that video. But all the reasons point to Florida flipping blue. It's trending blue. Yes, I know Bill Nelson. He was the incumbent senator. He lost there in 2018 to Rick Scott. I think that was before convicts had to pay a poll tax to vote. Seriously. So yeah, that's going to change obviously now, and yeah. So thank you for watching this video. If you're subscribed, that is so awesome. Thank you so much for helping me out. If you're considering subscribing or are just wondering how to subscribe, just hit the red button, please. It is simple and it would really help me out. So thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you all tomorrow.